savor, like my hometown that I favor. That old place down the long road that I'm traveling to. There's the jokes at the barber, told by Cleve from the hardware, about the stories that always make the news. Our town, wherever I may roam, I'll always have a place that I call home. Our town, it's very plain to see, there'll always be a part of you in me.
The residents of the city of Orillia in Simcoe County cherish a past of enterprise and ingenuity.
Hello, I'm Barry Penhale. In what was perhaps his most famous literary work, Sunshine Sketches of a Little Town, humorist Stephen Leacock told of the people and the goings-on in a town he chose to call Mariposa. In reality, Mariposa was the Ontario town of Orillia, where Leacock summered for 36 years. This is the desk of Orillia's most famous citizen, author of what has been called the most Canadian book ever written. Stephen Leacock enjoyed bringing together interesting people, which is exactly what we have done in order to best tell the story of Orillia, the Sunshine Town.
The story of Orillia originates in the earliest of Canadian history. Its geographic location is approximate to where once stood the native village, which was the capital of the Huron nation. The city of Orillia lies on the west side of the Narrows, separating Lakes Simcoe and Couchiching. Centuries before the arrival of the white man, the Narrows was a meeting place for Huron hunting parties. The Indians called it Michikun, meaning fence. It was the intersection of the north-south Toronto carrying place and the east-west Coldwater portage, an important point of travel as old as civilization in North America. The first white man to venture into this region was Samuel de Champlain. Champlain led his party of explorers into the country of the Hurons in 1615. This bronze monument in Couchiching Park is a tribute to him and that visit. Champlain met with the tribal chiefs to plan a campaign against the warring Iroquois to the south. Traveling down what is now the Trent Severn Waterway, the attacks against their common enemy were unsuccessful. Returning, he spent the winter here. 3 decades later, the Iroquois moved into the area, massacring the Huron. Inheritors of the land during the 18th century, the Ojibwe under Chief William Yellowhead surrendered the territory between Lake Ontario and Georgian Bay in a treaty signed in 1818. By 1830, the Ojibwe were settled on a reserve where today the city's business section stands. Settlement came slowly, encouraged by the fur trade, as the Narrows provided an excellent location for a trading post. Here, Antoine Godard, a French fur trader, established a post and eventually married an Ojibwe, Mary Schilling. The fur trade continued long after settlement began. The Hudson Bay Company maintained a trading post at Orillia until the latter part of the 1800s. As part of the Great Canadian Pine Belt, Orillia became not only a lumbering town in its own right, but an important depot, supplying lumber camps spread out over northern Ontario. Freight bound for these camps went by boat to Washego, and then onto the timber road to Gravenhurst. As the area continued to be settled, sawmills soon sprang up, with lumber becoming the mainstay. Narrow's village became Orillia as the economic base moved from lumbering to agriculture and manufacturing. Early industries included breweries, carriage works, furniture making, mining machinery production, and foundries. One carriage works destined for prominence was started by William Tudhope in 1878. First as a blacksmith and wheelwright shop, the company was a leader in its field by 1899 and one of the largest carriage companies in North America. By the early 1900s, the trend of the horseless carriage led to the formation of the Tudhope Motor Company. All major parts for the Tudhope car were designed and made in Orillia. Although it had ceased important production by 1924, the pioneering initiative and dramatic history of the Tudhope venture caught the imagination of residents then as it does now. The community progressed during this period, cheap hydropower attracting various industries. At the turn of the century, Orillia was the industrial center between Toronto and North Bay. The town's success can be linked to an attitude towards the development of industry, known as the Orillia spirit. It provided a healthy atmosphere for the free exchange of ideas by the leaders of the business community. Although rarely coined in history books, the Orillia spirit is clearly evident in the kind of ventures that help make this city unique. Sport has always been a part of Orillia's vitality. Well-known athletes such as boxing champ Walter Henry, lacrosse star Frank Bain, and the most famous Jake Goddard Sr., champion oarsman of the world in 1892, came from here. This is also the hometown of composer Gordon Lightfoot, sculptress Elizabeth Wynne Wood, painters Lucius O'Brien and Franklin Carmichael, authoress Mazo de la Roche, recognized for her Jalna novels, entertainers Albert, Merton, and Morley Plunkett, members of the well-known touring Dumbbells, and Sir Sam Steele, Steele of the Royal Mounted. William Sword Frost, once mayor of Orillia, operated a jewelry store at this location, and his son, Leslie, is long remembered as a premier of Ontario. The Orillia Opera House is a distinctive landmark. Originally serving as a municipal office and market square, the building, boasting excellent acoustics, is a cherished asset to the cultural life of the city. The tradition of Market Square is maintained each Saturday when buyers and sellers get together to share in produce from the land. Orillia gradually became a market town in the 1800s, noting its first agricultural show before 1850. Life here at the turn of the century was not unlike that of most small towns in Canada. There are certain characters and incidents that, when interpreted through the mind and wit of a humorist, allow society to observe itself in a less serious vein. In 1912, a gently satirical book was published containing memorable stories that took place in a town called Mariposa. Widespread sales of the book followed. The name of Mariposa did not fool any of the 6,000 inhabitants of Orillia. The characters were easily recognized. Reverend Rupert Drone, dozing under the plum tree. Henry Mullins, the bank manager, with a Mickey of Pilgrim's Special on his lap at the temperance picnic. And canny Josh Smith, who saved the day during the sinking of the Mariposa Belle. From his summer home near town, Stephen Leacock penned the majority of his astounding total of 64 books. The home today is the pride of Orillia and under the care of curator Jay Cody.
Barry, there's a great deal more to Stephen Leacock than Sunshine Sketches of a Little Town. He came here as a very young boy with his mother and father. His father was the younger son of a wealthy wine merchant in England, and his mother was a gentle lady who'd been raised as Victorian ladies were in all the arts of writing and music. They were both ill-prepared for life on the Canadian frontier, and that's where they ended up, on the south shore of Lake Simcoe. His father was much more interested in the tavern in Sutton than in farming, and as a result, naturally, the farm was anything but a success. He eventually abandoned his wife and 10 children by that time, and from the age of 17, Leacock was virtually the father figure in the family. He looked after his younger brothers and sisters. He interrupted his university career to take a job as a low-paying schoolmaster in a small town in order to support his family. So he knew all kinds of tragedy in his life. His fondest place in the entire world was right here at Old Brewery Bay. He used to say, "I can judge my friends by how they react to the word Old Brewery Bay. If they like that word, they can have the whole place. They're welcome at any time." He said, "I've known that name, Old Brewery Bay, to make people thirsty by correspondence as far away as Nevada." Yeah, he lived and wrote here happily and produced some of his finest works right here. He is a national figure. Certainly he's a local figure and always has been, particularly since the publishing of Sunshine Sketches of a Little Town. That got everybody's attention. And when the book was published, everybody in the entire book was easily recognizable. He entertained lavishly, and he entertained people from all walks of life, people in politics, sports, anybody who had accomplished something was of interest to Stephen Leacock. And some of the old Orillians who remember those days speak of it with real fondness and nostalgia. It was a very lively and wonderful place. I do think this is a national monument, as he was a national monument.
Economist, historian, political scientist, teacher, scholar, critic, and doctor of wit. Leacock's books have been published in 18 languages. The man who once wrote, "I'm a great believer in luck, and I find that the harder I work, the more I have of it," has left Canadians a legacy of laughter. The story of Orillia cannot be told without the story of Rama. The native people of this reserve are part of the soil, part of the land that their generations have known. Proud of their heritage, the people of Rama have contributed much to local history. Their most famous son, Arthur Schilling, came to be recognized as a painter foremost among Canada's artists. Sadly, his life ended recently while yet a young man. I was privileged to know Arthur and visited Millie Schilling, his wife, who reacquainted me with the powerful work of a major talent. Schilling was born at Rama and spent most of his life here. He was mainly self-taught, developing his own expressionist style. His work reveals the inner and outer life of the native people he painted and the landscapes against which they lived. The vibrant colors comment on what it means to be a native Indian in Canada, and perhaps in all of North America today. During my stay in Orillia, I had the opportunity to spend time with two people who call Orillia home. Tim Spencer introduced me to the Tudhope car, a keepsake Orillians are proud of.
Well, this particular Tudhope car was built here in Orillia in 1912, and it was one of production of approximately 5,000 to 6,000 that was built at that time. It's probably the most completely built Canadian car in content that's ever been manufactured in Canada. The car, as far as I'm personally concerned, is of some interest because I'm the great-grandson of the owner of the company that built the cars, which was the Tudhope Motor Company, which at that time was probably one of the biggest carriage companies in North America. And like most of the carriage companies in smaller towns, etc., they were beginning to see the need to get into the automotive industry. And this car was an expensive automobile at $1,475 in 1912, whereas you could probably buy a T somewhere in the Model T Ford, that is, between maybe $350, $400 at that time. But this was one of the first cars that was ever built, if not the first, with a 2-year guarantee on it.
Sue Mulcahy has always lived in Orillia. As we toured in the chilly autumn air, she pointed out highlights of the residential district and shared some personal comments.
What can you tell me about this particular location in the community?
In our park? Oh, this is one of the very first parts of the village that were cleared so that there would be access to the lake for the people with their canoes and their steamers. After all, that was the only transportation at that time. And as you can see down on the waterfront here, we have lovely docks, and there was a nice sand beach. And then, of course, we have our Champlain Monument. Brant is one of the older residential areas where you see some of the large houses that were built by the lumbermen that had large sawmills and lumber mills in Orillia. On the left here was the house that Mr. Bingham owned, and in Stephen Leacock's fame, he's known as Gingham. And I think you will have found that as quite an interesting thing. This home was originally built by Mr. J.H. Tuttle in 1912.
What does Orillia mean to you?
Orillia means home, and what I have been brought up to believe was very important. Your background and where you live and where you like to live and the people around you.
The Sunshine Town has instilled in many an enduring sense of community and belonging. It is this quality that I will remember as I look back on my visits to Orillia.
I'll see the folks up on Main Street who will always take the time for a story over coffee at the old Five and Dime. The flag on our town hall through the years has flown free, a tribute to our hometown's history. Have a place that I call home. Our town, it's very plain to see. There'll always be a part of you in me. There'll always be a part of you in me. There'll always be a part of you